When the Nintendo Switch released in 2017, it showed the world the power of a hybrid console. As it turned out, being able to dock a handheld so that you could switch between playing games on the go and on the big screen was an incredibly useful feature. It allowed you to have all of your games on a single device that you could carry around with you so you could pick up right from where you left off, regardless of how and where you were playing. The Steam Deck promises to take this to the next level. Not only can it dock to a TV or monitor like the Switch can, but the fact that it runs PC games means that your saves will seamlessly sync across devices with Steam Cloud, allowing you even more versatility. And when you consider that the Steam Deck is an emulation beast, it allows you to, in theory, carry around not only decades of PC games, but also the entire history of video games to play whenever, wherever, and however you want. However, when the Steam Deck first launched, it was missing both an official dock as well as the necessary software support to make docking it a useful feature for most people. Recently, a major software update finally added much better support for docking the Steam Deck, and with it, the release of both the official Steam Deck dock and many unofficial third-party docks. But the question remains, is using the Steam Deck docked a good experience? How does it compare to the Nintendo Switch? Can it provide the same seamless experience switching between handheld and docked play? And if you do want to use it docked, what accessories or docks should you be looking to buy? In this video, I'll be diving into the current state of docked play on the Steam Deck and answering all of these questions. But before we get into it, if you find this video helpful, go ahead and subscribe. I'm trying to grow the channel and every single subscriber I get really helps out. So, how do you dock a Steam Deck? Well, all you have to do is connect either a dock with a video output or an HDMI cable to the USB-C port at the top of the Steam Deck. This will cause it to switch over to outputting to your TV or monitor. Easy, right? Well, not so much. The unfortunate reality is that while docking your Steam Deck is easy enough, getting a good experience out of it is something else entirely. For instance, let's say that you dock your Steam Deck while you are already playing a game, with the intent to continue playing on a bigger screen. You know, like you would with a Nintendo Switch. If you do this, upon connecting it, you'll be greeted with an incredibly blurry image on screen, and these ugly black borders on the sides. This is because the Steam Deck is incapable of changing the resolution of a game after it is already running. Even if you go into the settings for the game, it will only show you up to 800p, the resolution of the Steam Deck's built-in screen. So, if you want to get a more correct resolution, you have to close any running game and reopen it after docking your Steam Deck. This will get it to run at the correct aspect ratio and get rid of those ugly bars on the sides. But your game will still be a blurry mess. Why? Because doing this doesn't fix the resolution, just the aspect ratio. Instead of getting 1080p, you're getting 720p, as opposed to the original 800p. Now, this is a step in the right direction, and for some games, this might even be what you want. But let's say you actually want to run the game at 1080p. How do you do that? Well, first you have to go into the display settings of Steam while your deck is docked, and set it to the resolution you want it to output at, or leave it at the default if you're connecting to a 1080p screen. But this alone is not enough. By default, Steam will run every game at 720p. So you'll have to go into the options for each game you want to play at a different resolution and set the resolution you want that game to run at in docked play. But even this is still not enough. Even after doing all this, after booting up the game, you will often find that the game is still running at 720p. This is because PC games generally will run at the last resolution you told them to run at, unless that resolution is too large for the current display. So even after setting 1080p inside Steam, you will often have to go into the game settings after booting it up and tell the game itself to run at that resolution. And if you play the game in handheld mode once after doing this, well, the next time you play it docked, it will once again revert to 720p. And you'll have to go into the settings once more to set it to 1080p. It should be clear at this point that the Steam Deck does not and cannot deliver a seamless docked experience the same way the Nintendo Switch does. The Steam Deck requires you to restart the game in order to even get the correct aspect ratio, mess around with settings ahead of time to even get the option to select 1080p in-game, and requires that you manually adjust the resolution and settings each time you boot up a game in docked mode. And that last point bears repeating. So far, all I've discussed is what it takes to get the resolution correct. Anyone who's used the Steam Deck to play modern games knows that a huge part of getting a good experience playing games on deck is dialing in the graphics settings just right, using a combination of in-game settings and the deck's provided performance tools. If you run a game at a different resolution, all of that gets thrown out the window. You'll find yourself unable to hit the same frame rate targets you could at 800p, and while you could go in and tweak the settings every single time you switch between playing a game in handheld and docked, that isn't really a very good docked experience, now is it? There's even another problem with graphics settings. One of the cool things about the Steam Deck is that you can set its internal display's refresh rate to either 40 or 50 Hz for games that can't quite hit 60 FPS. This lets you have a consistent, smooth frame rate at something that looks a bit better than capping a game at 30 FPS. However, the Steam Deck does not currently support variable refresh rate output, so it will override your refresh rate settings while docked. So if you had everything tuned for a consistent 40 FPS at 40 Hz in handheld mode, you'll end up with a stuttery 40 to 50 FPS mess while docked. So to answer the question of whether the Steam Deck's docked experience can hold a candle to the Nintendo Switches, the answer is a definitive no. You cannot dock and keep playing the same way you could on a Switch, and you cannot have an optimal experience without manually changing settings each and every time you switch between docked and handheld play. However, all that being said, it's not to say that you can't have a good experience using the Steam Deck docked. The best way to do this is to go about playing games while docked in a way that minimizes your need to manually tweak settings. For modern, demanding titles, my recommendation would be to just play them at the default setting of 720p. And if the image is too blurry for your liking, opening up the performance menu and toggling FSR on. This will keep all your graphics settings intact for when you switch back to handheld mode and let you switch between handheld and docked play with minimal hassle, at the cost of having a slightly subpar docked experience. Where the docked experience shines, however, is for older, less demanding titles, and particularly for retro games played on emulators. Less demanding titles don't require tweaking additional settings to have an optimal experience at a higher resolution. A game like Shovel Knight, for instance, obviously won't struggle to hit a solid 60 FPS even after bumping up the resolution. Unfortunately, even for a game like this, you still have to go into the in-game settings and correct the resolution on each and every boot up, or else it will default to 720p. Emulators, however, offer the best docked experience. Emulators seem to have no trouble detecting the correct resolution they should be running at on startup, perhaps because they're native Linux applications, instead of Windows applications running through Proton. All you have to do is select the resolution you want it to run at in docked mode in Steam, and from then on it will correctly run at either 800p in handheld mode or the chosen resolution in docked mode. This is notable because emulators are one of the best use cases for docking a Steam Deck to begin with. While many modern games eschew local multiplayer, especially on PC, there's a bounty of retro games that still hold up today with wonderful local multiplayer experiences. Being able to carry around a device that can play the entire history of gaming, that you can just hook up to any screen or monitor to play with your friends, using any controllers of your choice that you happen to have laying around, is amazing. And despite all the hoops you have to jump through for more modern games, there can be some big advantages there too. Two games that I enjoy are Path of Exile and Final Fantasy XIV. And while both of them have console versions, Path of Exile's console servers are completely separate from its PC servers, and Final Fantasy XIV requires you to re-buy the game on your console of choice in order to play on multiple devices. Because the Steam Deck is playing the PC version of those games, however, I can have a console experience playing them on a TV without having to play on a separate server or re-buy a game I already own. Overall, while the docked Steam Deck experience is messier than I would like, being able to use your handheld as a portable gaming console has some huge benefits, especially when it comes to retro and less demanding titles. So the question that remains is, what do you need in order to set this up for yourself? Unfortunately, the Steam Deck does not come with a dock or any way to connect it up to a screen. If you want to dock your Steam Deck, you will have to buy the means to do so separately. I'm going to cover a few of your options to do this, and I'll be including Amazon affiliate links in the description below. If you're planning on buying one of these anyways, using these links will help support the channel, and I'd really appreciate your support. First of all, you don't actually have to buy a dock. All you really need is a USB-C to HDMI cable plugged into the top of your Steam Deck and connected up to a screen. The major disadvantage of this is that because the Steam Deck only has the one USB-C port, you will be unable to charge your deck while it's docked. This isn't ideal if you're looking to have a permanent dock setup in your own home, but if you just want a cable you can bring with you, so you can connect your Steam Deck up to a TV and play games elsewhere, maybe while visiting a friend, this is a great choice. It's a cheap option too. You can get a 6-foot Amazon Basics cable for only $12, provided you don't need 4K at 60 Hz support, which I don't know why you would. The next option is to get the official Steam Deck dock directly from Valve. This is very pricey. It costs $90. However, it has one huge upside over third-party docks. It comes with an additional official Steam Deck charger. This is perfect if you don't already have a ton of USB-C chargers lying around, or value using official chargers over third-party ones off of Amazon. Beyond the official dock offerings, there's a wide selection of third-party docks available if you don't really want to pony up $90 to Valve for theirs. For instance, I was provided this dock by the manufacturer to take a look at. Unlike most of the other docks, including the official dock, this one is made out of an aluminum alloy, giving it a very sturdy feel. Other than not having a DisplayPort output, which most third-party docks don't bother to include, its specs are on par with the official dock, making it a great choice if you already have a USB-C charger or two lying around. At the time of recording, it only costs about $37, about a third of the price of the official dock. While these are the three options that I have used myself and can vouch for, there are a wide variety of other options out there. For instance, many seem to vouch for this JS Aux dock. So if that's a brand that you trust, go for it. Regardless of what you go with, I hope you enjoy trying the Steam Deck docked for yourself. And while I'm not sure how much of the messiness with docking the Steam Deck is really within Valve's ability to solve, I hope they're looking into it and come up with some improvements in future updates. If you have anything to add about your own experiences using your Steam Deck docked, or tips on how to make the process smoother, go ahead and leave a comment. And if you found this video helpful, leave a like, subscribe, or even a super thanks if you found it particularly helpful. Every little bit really helps out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.